All right, it is 7 p.m. and 9 seconds. Town Board meeting, Estes Park Town Board, Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. Anyone who'd like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us may do so. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a proclamation to start the evening, and I will read said proclamation. Oh, here's mine. It's yours. Whereas over 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with clinical Alzheimer's dementia, and whereas the need for specialized, compassionate care and respite for dementia patients and their caregivers is critical in the Estes Valley, whereas a significant portion of our community is over the age of 60, and whereas in September 2024, several Estes Park residents met to discuss establishing a dementia daycare center in the community, and whereas in early 2025, a full committee of dedicated local residents was formed, leading to the establishment of a nonprofit corporation and to the formation of a board of directors, thereby enabling planning and fundraising to begin. And whereas in early 2026, the parish of St. Bartholomew's in Estes Park offered to lease a location for the center, a generous gesture that reflects their deep commitment to our community. And whereas on May 4th, 2026, the Estes Dementia Day Center opened its doors to serve the community of Estes Park. Now, there are very rare occasions where I will allow the outburst from the audience. Thank you. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and the board of trustees of the town of Estes Park welcome and celebrate the opening of the Estes Dementia Day Center to the town of Estes Park, which has a mission to serve adults with dementia through an enriching day program offering caregivers essential respite time guided by the values of compassion, joy, dignity, and safety. Thanks to all who helped contribute to that, as well as to put the whole thing together. Wonderful effort. So. We'll look at the agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda as written? I see none. I'll take a motion.
I move the approval of the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Trustee Brown moved to approve the agenda as written. Mayor Pro Tem Hazelton seconded, and we can vote. Agenda approved as written. I should point out Trustee Eigel will not be here tonight, but we have a quorum and can conduct all of our business tonight. Public comment. This section is for public comment for items not on the agenda. This is not a question and answer period. Does any member of the public request to speak on a non-agenda item? And I should mention any quasi-judicial issues must be reserved for the appropriate public hearing. Sue, do I have any member of the public request to speak on a non-agenda item? Or is your hand up? I see I do not have my timer out here, therefore I will, for 3 minutes, I will use my good old-fashioned iPhone.
Don't start it yet. But my name is John Guffey. I live at 561 Chapin Lane, and I'm here to just recognize Mother's Day. I know it's past, and I'm often late for things, so forgive me for bringing this message. But I'd like to first read from Mark Nepo's book. It's a day book, subtitle, well, it is the Book of Awakening, and it's subtitled Having the Life You Want by Living in the Presence of the Life You Have. And today's reading is titled Being Direct. There's a statement here that everyone is bald underneath their hair. A little bit of humor. We waste so much energy trying to cover up who we are, when beneath every attitude is the want to be loved, and beneath every anger is the wound to be healed, and beneath every sadness is the fear that there will not be enough time. When we hesitate in being direct, we unknowingly slip something on, some added layer of protection that keeps us from feeling the world. And often that thin covering is the beginning of a loneliness which, if not put down, diminishes our chances for joy. It's like wearing gloves every time we touch something. And then, forgetting we chose to put them on, we complain that nothing feels quite right. In this way, our challenge each day is not to get dressed to face the world, but to unglove ourselves so that the doorknob feels cold, and the car handle feels wet, and the kiss goodbye feels like the lips of another being, soft and unrepeatable. And he tells us to, as you breathe, let each breath undress your being of attitude, of mood, of history. As you breathe, feel your skin beneath your clothes. As you breathe, feel your being just beneath your skin. And in honor of Mother's Day, I just wanted to refer to the role in the presence of women who stand and speak and have stood up and spoken, and who have acted for the goodness of all. As the Lakota say, mitakoyasin, all my relatives, all my relations, that is all of us together.
15 seconds.
15. Okay, why did Mother Earth break up with other planets? She needed space. And the last prompt, why did Grandfather Tree tell the young sapling to be quiet? Because Mother Earth was speaking through the wind, and you should never interrupt your mother. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments for items not on the agenda? Oh, I get it. Okay. False alarm. All right. We'll move forward. Town board comments and liaison reports. And Trustee Eshelman.
Mayor, I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Trustee Brown.
I have a few things. First, for the EDWC, the Economic Development Workforce Council, they have concluded their BASE 2.0 program, which is kind of their signature educational program for businesses, and they're going to celebrate and have a graduation on May 20th. There 13 businesses and 15 individuals will graduate, so very good participation this year. They're going to have their first Latino Alliance Roundtable in the library on May 27th at 4 o'clock. So if you're interested in joining that, please do. And you, by the way, you can register for all this on the Chamber website. And they're also launching the Estes Next Generation Network of young professionals. So whether you're a business owner, a manager, employee, it's built to be welcoming, inclusive, and geared towards those under 45 who are looking to connect, grow, and get involved. So they'll kick off things May 26th at Performance Park at 4 p.m. With a fun rock climbing experience led by KMAC following the social event. So that's kind of the EWDC update. I'm also on the Arts District Council, and there's, it's kind of an embryonic group in the sense that it just got certified as a creative arts district, and they've hired a new arts and culture program director, Talia Sienz. They're probably most importantly, they're pursuing a bid to host the Colorado Creative Alliance Industries Conference in 2028. And I've seen the proposal. It's very robust, lots of recommendations. It would probably result in 300 to 400 people from around the state coming here, should it be awarded to Estes Park. And getting that creative district designation was key to getting that. They're also working on a number of efforts for murals around town. They are quite aware of our restrictions on commercial aspects to these murals, but there are some. There's a new one on East Riverside Drive on Misty Mountain Lodge, which you might want to check out. So they're growing and trying to get involved more with the community in various respects. They are supported by Visit Estes Park, by the town's base funding, and they're moving forward. That's what I've got.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hazelton.
Thanks, Mayor. A couple of things tonight. First, I want to congratulate the Estes Dementia Day Center on your opening. It's pretty amazing when, I was just sharing this with my husband over the weekend, that it's amazing when someone, or a group of someone's in this case, says, this is important and we want to see this happen, and then it happens. Like, so many times you have these ideas or you have these, thoughts or concepts, and they, maybe find a different path. And in this case, yours happened. It's so inspiring and so wonderful. And I'm sure I'm making it sound much easier than it actually was. Didn't just happen for you all, but just want to congratulate you on such a job well done. So
I should say that Kirby was at our very first meeting.
thanks, Pete. So just congratulations on that. Next, I want to just note that the next Visit Estes Park board meeting is this next Thursday, May 21st at 1:30. I had to make sure I had that right. That board meeting is held in person at the Visit Estes Park offices, which are over by Hunter's Chop House, in that building where the fire district has their offices as well. And you can also join on Zoom. So I just encourage folks to attend those meetings. They're wonderful. It's a great touching point for what's going on with marketing and tourism in the community. I attended last Sunday Cinco de Mayo, so thank you to the organizers of that event for the invitation. It was, per usual, a wonderful event. Just very grateful to be involved, and grateful that Olga and Curtis and their group of just incredible people put that on. It was, we got there a little bit after it started, maybe 5 or 10 minutes after it started, and the line was quite long. I think I saw Chris in line there too, but it was great. And then finally, I just wanted to note, I'm sure folks have seen this in the various news media outlets and on social media, but in case people aren't aware, the post office is taking comments on a potential relocation, and they're encouraging folks to submit their input. They're looking for a facility that's 5,800 to 8,000 square feet, located within a 3-mile radius from the main post office. Not looking at diminishing any retail services, but just looking for public input. So if you have not submitted comments yet, or if you have opinions on that, please submit those. I'm happy to share the information. We all got a little printout as members of the board in our mailbox. So happy to share that information if you can't find it online. But this is a great opportunity to make your voice heard on a service that is obviously quite important to our community, and we as a town board have talked about quite a bit in terms of some of the challenges they face in their current location. And that's all I have tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, Trustee Lancaster.
Originally had nothing, but I just want to mention I sent my letter to the post office today. So definitely the more they hear from us, the better, to show that this is something we really need in this community. And that's it. Thank you.
Trustee Mears.
Just want to second the congratulations of the Dementia Day Center. That's going to be a great resource for the community. So nice work.
Thank you. Well, let's see, my typical 2 weeks between board meeting, met with people from the YMCA, met with the Quo Group, Whimsidoodle, VEP, did stuff at the school, Sundance, PRPA, Crossroads, the hospital, fire board, Cinco de Mayo, a few other things. I was even on the Weather Channel on the day of the big snow. So if you didn't catch it, I've got the links, I'll send them to you. I think I said something about how much we love getting the snow and how well rested our snowplow crews are right now because we've had so little, something like that. The PRPA thing, I will make mention of one thing. There is a development happening down in the Severance area with a 400 megawatt battery that is going to go in there. That's our first large scale battery. And of course, it represents the foundation and infrastructure for growing much, much more, and for battery storage to begin to become a very, very important part of the electrical generation and storage for us, for all 4 communities. Also, there is a 5 megawatt feeder or starter project for each of the 4 municipalities, which is actually pretty big for us, pretty small for Fort Collins, but those things are in practice too. So over the next couple of years, we're going to see a whole lot more battery storage opportunity with PRPA. That's about all that I have there. I think everybody covered all of some of the really good developments and everything. So we will move on to the town administrator report.
Thanks, Mayor. First, I do want to thank all of our plow drivers, power communications crew members, facilities team, and the fleet team for their work during the most recent snowstorm. I can say that while we haven't unfortunately been able to practice much this year, they didn't miss a beat. So even being short down, we had a few team members. We had a lot of folks step up and really do a great job of responding to that snowstorm. I want to express my appreciation to them. Secondly, you will see in your packet the 2026 Town Organizational Plan. Policy 3.13 requires that I present that plan to the board at the first regular board meeting following the certification of the results of each biennial election. You'll note I am 1 board meeting late with this packet. It should have come to you last time, so that will be a policy governance non-compliance issue that will be reported again to you when policy 3.13 comes up later this year for review. But you do have it in front of you in the packet. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. That is through the division level, as well as some very specific functions that are important to note. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda, and I will read it into the record in full. Item 1, expenditure approval list bills. Item 2, town board meeting study session minutes dated April 28th, 2026. Item 3, town board strategic planning session number 2 minutes dated April 30, 2026. Item 4, resolution 5326, contract extension with Vance Brothers LLC for the 2026 Chip and Crack Seal program, $315,848.27 budgeted. Item 5, Resolution 5426, contract extension with Colson Excavating Company, Inc. for the 2026 Overlay and Patching Program, $1,384,209.50 budgeted. Item 6 was removed by staff. Item 7, 5626, license agreement with U.S. Bureau of Reclamation for the Mall Road Waterline Project. Item 8, Resolution 5726, setting the public hearing for a new Vintner Restaurant liquor license application for Snowy Peaks Winery, LLC DBA Snowy Peaks Winery, 292 and 294 Moraine Avenue, Estes Park, Colorado. Item 9, Resolution 5826, intergovernmental agreement with Federal Transit Administration for fiscal year 2026 certifications and assurances as required for Federal Transit Administration funding for public transportation. Item 10, Resolution 5926, termination of memorandum of understanding between the town of Estes Park and the Uplands at Fish Creek PUD Association. And finally, item 11, Resolution 6026, additional compensation for the Mall Road Water Loop construction easements, 2,000 budgeted. Does any member of the public, or including the town board, request to have an item removed from the consent agenda?
Mayor, I'd
Trustee
like
Eshelman.
to request to remove 5326. It's just a curiosity question. And then Resolution 6026, more of a process question.
So that was item 11 and item
4.
4. Item 4 and 11, we will remove those from the consent agenda. Are there any other changes? Seeing none, I'll take a motion on that modified consent agenda
I'll make the motion
to approve the,
to approve the consent agenda with the 2 items removed.
okay.
I'll second.
Trustee Eshelman moved to approve the consent agenda with items 4 and 11 removed for discussion, and trustee Brown seconded. We can vote. Consent agenda approved with the modifications. We'll turn to item 4. I think you wanted some clarification on Resolution 5326, the Vance Brothers contract extension.
It's more of a kind of a curiosity. You're using this reclamite, or if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yes.
A new process, at least for Estes Park. And I was just curious, I Googled it a little bit, the pink solution, it sounds like that they'll be putting down, and it sounds like it's ideal to put that down within 1 to 3 years or 1 to 2 years of new pavement, and then sometimes a little bit more beneficial in the future.
Yes.
But
yeah,
do you do it
that's spot
multiple
on.
times or just once in its lifetime?
So it depends on the deficiencies of the pavement, but typically a newer pavement, up to 5 years old, that doesn't have a lot of wear and tear or any structural failure. So what it does, it's an asphalt rejuvenator, so it gets into the binders of the asphalt and kind of corrects some of those oxidation issues. So we apply it, and we've never done it before in Estes, but Larimer County does it, the city of Loveland does it. So all of our neighboring partners do it and have had success with it. So we want to try to do it on kind of a smaller scale to start and see how it performs up here in this environment. But yeah, the application, it's a liquid form. It gets sprayed over the entire surface of the roadway, and then a sand essentially gets spread out to kind of blot and help with traction issues on that material. It cures within an hour, and then the sand is swept off. So it's very, very quick process, low impact. We're going to be doing McGregor Avenue north of the roundabout, and then Scott Avenue. So we're pretty excited to see how it performs. It's like I said, it's relatively new to us, so we're excited to try something new and add it to our toolbox.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions on this or discussion? If not, I'll take a motion on item 4.
I'll make the motion, we accept item 4 as presented.
I'll second.
Trustee Eshelman moved to approve consent agenda item 4, and trustee Lancaster seconded. We can vote on that. Item 4 approved. We're on to item 11. Chris.
And good evening.
Good evening.
And it's really kind of just a process question.
Sure.
And a timing question. You have to come back for $2,000 for a simple extension of an easement that I'm assuming was already approved.
It was. We have had the easement approved. I don't recall the date. It's in the memo. And right at the time we were coming to the board, the owner of the property sent an email over saying, hey, I had to do one more final review for the additional language change that was made. So this is just the additional compensation for his attorneys, and it just kind of missed the first time, so we just crossed paths with it.
And I understand that. Is there no provision in our process to be able to maybe streamline those type of small things so that timing-wise, we don't have to wait for such a simple thing? It's just a question, maybe more for.
I think in the future, there might be a way for the board to delegate some level of negotiation authority to staff if we're anticipating some back and forth on it. In this case, we weren't, but, learning a lesson here, we might in the future. There's a balance there because you also don't want if you think you have an agreement, you don't want all of a sudden, well, staff has more authority to negotiate additional compensation. So we can look into it further and see if there's anything we can change to avoid having to bring a $2,000 thing back. That also slows the process down. It's a good point.
Okay, thank you. That was it.
Other questions? Otherwise, I'll take a motion on this.
I'll move to approve Resolution 60-26.
Second.
Trustee Brown moved to approve 6026, item 11, and Mayor Pro Tem Hazelton seconded, and we can vote on that. All right, consent agenda complete. That measure passes also. We're going to get into reports and discussion items, and we have a base funding report tonight from another very, very important nonprofit in the Estes Valley, the Estes Valley Crisis Advocates.
Hello.
Director Fanucci.
Yes. All right. Where did it go? Okay, hi, there we go, okay. Hi, I'm Michelle Fanucci. I'm the Program Director and Law Enforcement Liaison for the Estes Valley Crisis Advocates. I want to thank you all for inviting me to speak here and talk to you a little bit about what we do and how we use your base funding money. Some of you haven't heard me before, so I'm going to quickly go over our mission. EVCA is committed to ending violence for all victims of crime and trauma, including domestic violence and sexual assault survivors. And we promote empowerment and healing through crisis counseling, referrals, community education, and safe housing. Basically, I broke down what we do into 3 categories. We have a DV shelter, known as My Sister's Place. We perform crime victim services with law enforcement. And we go to unattended deaths. So for the domestic violence shelter, we have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home here in Estes Park. It has a playroom, a kitchen, a common room, laundry room, and it's a nonviolent living space for all victims of DV and their children. So we serve tourists, people who work here, people who live here, and sometimes people who are a little more transient than that, but mainly tourists and workers and residents. For the crime victim services, this is probably of most importance to the town. In the supporting material for this talk, I added information on the Victims Crime Act for the state of Colorado, and it has all the information about the constitutional mandate and the types of crimes that we work with. In most jurisdictions in the state of Colorado, victim services are handled by employees of the police department. However, because we're Estes Park and we're unique in a lot of ways, we do the crime victim services for the Estes Park Police Department. We work with people who self-refer, so sometimes we work with crime victims that haven't yet reported to police. However, that does limit what we can do for them. We have law enforcement referrals. So either when a victim crime is reported or there's an arrest, we kick into motion. We provide legal system navigation for the victim. And so hardly anyone I work with has ever dealt with the legal system before I come in to talk to them once they're a victim. And so I talk about what a bond hearing looks like, how to attend the bond hearing if they want to, what the judge might ask them at the bond hearing. I also manage their expectations on what the bond might be. Here in Larimer County, I have to say, a victim wants an arrest to happen and for that person to get thrown in jail and throw away the key. That's not really what happens. A lot of times they get a PR bond or a co-PR bond or a small cash bond. So I need to manage expectations of our victims before they go to court. We do victims' rights notifications per state statute. We help with victims' compensation applications. And again, we serve all the residents, visitors, and workers in the Estes Valley. So anytime that there's a crime here in the Estes Valley, we help out with that. The third thing that people know us from is from our work with unattended deaths. And I put this in because last year, Trustee Eigel mentioned it because he was a firefighter, and that's where he saw us most often. Unattended deaths are unexpected. There's a loved one left behind at the scene. The person wasn't under care of a medical doctor or hospice. Oftentimes it's residents and tourists, second homeowners that don't have support systems here in town. So we come in, we're the ones that people have control over. They can tell us to leave if they want to. They can't tell the police to leave. They can't tell the coroner to leave, but they can control our, whether or not we're there. We sit with them, we explain the process, whether or not the coroner is going to come, why it takes so long for the coroner to come, if it's going to be a funeral home director. We help them, we sit with them when they make phone calls to other members of their family for support. We help them determine what the next steps are, anything that they need. They need us to make coffee, we'll make coffee. You know, we do whatever we have to for the unattended deaths. These are our on-scene response partners. So you guys are mainly interested in that we work with the Estes Park Police Department, but we also work with Larimer County Sheriff's Office District 6, so that covers the rest of our service area in Larimer County. Estes Valley Fire, the UC Health Estes Valley Medical Center. We're often at the emergency room when we need to be there. And we also work with Rocky Mountain National Park Rangers, because right now, the last time I talked to their victims advocates, they had 2 victims advocates for the whole country, for the national park system. So they're not gonna be here when a crisis happens. So we step in to help out at the beginning of the crisis, and then we hand off to the federal victims advocates, because their system is a little bit, well, actually a lot of bit different than ours. In 2025, we served 479 unique clients for a total of 986 safe shelter nights in our domestic violence shelter. So a safe shelter night is 1 night per person. So if there's a mother with 2 children, then that would be 3 safe shelter nights per day. That was a total of 1,522 client contacts. And we are blessed with our volunteers and our volunteer board members, because they gave us almost 4,000 volunteer hours to help out. And as you can see from the demographics, most of our clients are women, and you'll see why on the next slide. Each year, our client numbers go up a little bit. They stay fairly stable, but our safe shelter nights have gone up for the last 3 years. In 2023, there were only 765 safe shelter nights. So we're increasing the use of our shelter, unfortunately. This is the victimization breakdown from our clients in 2025, and you can see the majority of our victims report domestic violence. About 86% of our clients report domestic violence. Now, that could be domestic violence with another victimization. Some people come in and they don't report to the police, and they don't really describe an assault or anything like that, but they describe domestic violence that's not criminal or can't be charged. So we work with them, because we would much prefer someone come to us in that situation than after the police have come or somebody's ended up in the hospital. We also work with a lot of assault victims. Stalking and harassment's on the rise. One of the things that is actually increasing in the last few years is human trafficking that's reported to us. So in both labor, but mostly sex trafficking. We've had a lot of clients report being sex trafficked, which is horrible. And I'm not sure if it's because more people know about it and they're willing to say. We also do some elder abuse. And then the other crimes, there can be menacing, which is a person crime. But things like criminal trespass, obstruction, criminal mischief, those are not person crimes. But if they're attached to a domestic violence arrest, then they automatically become a victim's rights crime. So we work with that. And then the UAD is our unattended deaths, which stays kind of stable over the years. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about our funding trends. This is not just us, but it is all of victim services. So we have actually lost about $160,000 in federal and state funding over the last few years due to the loss of the Victims Crime Fund federally, and it trickles down to everyone. So I say that to say that the base funding is becoming more and more important to us. And for our projected 2026 budget, we don't have a balanced budget right now. We're working to write more foundation grants. But again, we're not the only victim services group, and domestic violence groups were hit even harder than victim services groups with the funding cuts. So everyone in our field is turning to private foundations. So we're working our hardest, doing our best. We've gotten a couple this year, so that's good. And I wanted to show you what we did to help balance the budget. We decided, since 86% of our expenses are in personnel, that we needed to cut hours, staff hours. So between 2024 and 2025, over the 6 paid employees, we cut 520 hours per year. In this year, we cut an additional 1,144 hours. So now we're down to 3 full-time at 36 hours and then 3 part-time staff. So we've cut down. It means we don't have 2 people on call at night anymore. We have 1 person on call at night, and then the executive director or I am on backup, sort of unpaid backup for that. So if there's multiple things happening, then we'll be put on automatically by dispatch. But we still manage to be on call 24/7. We have people in the office Monday through Friday, all day long, plus a couple hours on Saturday and a couple hours on Sunday, so that we can serve people as best we can. We just don't have, we might have just 1 person in the office for that time. We have our office line, a text line, which helps a lot. People don't answer their phones anymore, by the way. You actually have to text them to get them to call you back or to communicate with you. And then we work through the dispatch here in town. And we respond to our calls no matter what time of day, the weather, holidays. We just quietly serve the community. Was that 7 minutes? I tried.
It's such an important service, incredibly important. It's such a shame to see the decreasing funding from some of the more national or state sources, but that's the world that we live in. What do you think your chances are on some of these other grants?
We received a foundation grant from El Pomar this spring that we hadn't had before, so we're very glad about that. We've got a couple more in the works, and we have a lovely board that is helping us comb through all the foundation grant funding, and so we're just doing our best to apply for everything that fits our mission. We're trying not to do anything that doesn't fit our mission, because I think what we do for this area is so specific and so unique that we don't want to spread ourselves thin doing additional programming.
And we really can't predict what 2027 will be like.
No, we hope things have evened out a little bit. The first 2 years, 24 and 25, it was just like every few months we were getting, oh, they're taking this money away, this money away. But it seems to have
Stabilization.
leveled out a little bit.
We hope, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Trustee
Questions?
Brown.
Yeah, we got a question about your involvement in the legal aspects of the domestic
We
victim.
don't give legal advice.
No, I know you don't
Yeah.
give legal advice, but do you help them to get like no contact orders and coordinate things through the sheriff's office?
Yep.
On that sort of thing?
Yep, so we can help them fill out civil protection orders. We can help them with the application. A lot of our clients get the protection order at the arraignment. And so we work with them about why they want a no contact order. It used to be that for domestic violence, it was a shall order law. It's now may order a no contact.
Oh, so it's
I
not
don't,
automatic.
yeah, I'm not a big fan for domestic violence. So I try to work with them about asking for the full no contact order and why they want a full no contact order, at least for a while, a little cooling off period. And then we receive an email from the court with the protection order in it, so I can get the protection
good.
order to the victim the same day as the bond hearing, which is huge because that's a very dangerous time when someone's being released from jail.
Right.
Our officers are really good about looking them up, but it's just nice for the person to have it
So are they normally in jail first then?
before we find out.
yeah.
So we can be told multiple ways. We can be told by an officer. Like there's a couple of deputies that'll send me emails in the middle of the night saying, "Hey, I had this DV case that didn't rise to the level of an arrest. Here's the victim's name and number. Could you please reach out and see what you can do?"
Yeah.
Sometimes, so when it's not there, sometimes people leave and they can't make an arrest right away. So if we can be told by the police officers, and then we do also get every morning any arrests from this area, they send us the incident reports.
Yeah, I know that process for a victim is tough.
Yeah.
And they need the help for sure, particularly when the legal process is involved, so.
Yeah, and then the DA's not going to get involved here until after the first appearance.
Yes.
And so I manage their expectations for that as well. And if they want to reach out earlier, I have the numbers and the emails that they can reach out to.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you're not having to turn people away because of the reduced funding. I'm sure is it putting just more load on staff to be able to take care of those same people, but you're not having to turn them away yet?
We sometimes have to turn people away because we're full. And we do have some restrictions on the safe house. Like we are unable to take pets. It's an older house. The air handling isn't, it's all one big air handling space. So we can't do that in case people have allergies and things like that. It would be all over the place. So that is actually a barrier. There are 4 pet-friendly shelters that are 2 of them are within about an hour, 10 minutes. The other 2 one is in Bailey and one is in Aurora. So there aren't very many pet-friendly DV shelters,
Okay,
unfortunately. So that is one of the barriers we face too.
thank you.
Yep.
Trustee Lancaster.
I'm just curious, do you guys have like set territories, or how do you work with crisis advocates groups in Loveland and places like that? I mean, what area do you serve, and is that something designated, or how does that work?
So our area is basically south on 7 to the Boulder County line, all the way up to the Alpine Visitor Center. We've worked the Alpine Visitor Center before. All the way down, we do Glen Haven, Storm Mountain. Drake is iffy depending on which deputy makes the call. So sometimes they send it to us and sometimes they send it to Larimer County Victim Services. And then we do Pinewood Springs as well, down to the Boulder County line in Pinewood Springs. We have worked with Boulder County collaboratively before. We've also worked with the Forest Service. For victim services, it's very specific. For domestic violence, we just try to get someone in the best shelter we can. So if we can't serve that person for, like if they have a pet or cats or frogs or turtles, there's all sorts of things, then we try to get them in at one of our sister houses down. The problem with that is we can't talk. We're 100% confidential, so we can't call and talk about a client to another safe house. So we can empower the client to call, and we can help them and give them all the resources and sit with them unless they sign a release of information for us. Yeah.
Well, thanks for your strength and flexibility and creativity in keeping the service going. A great report. Thank you
Okay.
so much for what you
Thanks.
do.
Thanks. Have a good night.
One 30 seconds while I deliver the proclamation to the person who should have gotten it when we gave that earlier. So I want to make up for that. I'm going to take it out to Peter Senna, so he's got it to share in the appropriate places.
Thank you for the kind.
Thanks again. I did it. We'll move on to action items.
Is there no room for community comment to that presentation?
No, the report and discussion items, typically, we don't have a section for community comments. Hopefully, the trustees have reflected the gratefulness for the service. We'll move forward to action item ordinance, number 1, ordinance 826, amending chapter 3.08 of the Estes Park Municipal Code to exempt certain hygiene products from the town sales tax, presented by Director Zimmerman.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor and trustees. Finance Director Tammy Zimmerman. Tonight, we're here to review and discuss and possibly adopt Ordinance 0826 for proposed amendments to the Town of Estes Park Municipal Code to exempt certain period and incontinent products from the town's sales tax.
This is a public hearing.
Oh,
I need to open it properly. All right, let me read it properly here. At this hearing, the Board of Trustees shall consider the information presented during the public hearing from the town staff, from the applicant, public comment, and written comments received on the item. I don't think there is an applicant. I think this came from the board. Any member of the board may ask questions at any stage of the public hearing, which may be responded to at that time. The public hearing is open. Okay, now you can proceed.
perfect. At the March 24th, 2026 Town Board Study Session, the board did provide direction to move forward with adopting exemptions S, which is diapers and incontinence products, and exemption T, which are period products, with a proposed effective date of July 1st of this year. The intent is to reduce the cost of these essential goods and support our community members and families. And just a little bit of history, in 2022, the state of Colorado adopted House Bill 22-1055, and it eliminated the 2.9% state sales tax on these period products and incontinence products, and authorized local governments to opt out as well. And I've provided a very small font list of the state-allowed exemptions, as you can see with the star next to exemption S and T. There's about 18 of these. As Town Administrator Mahalik had mentioned in the study session during the governance policy presentation, the town is a statutory city, and the Colorado Department of Revenue does collect and distribute our sales tax. And the list is the allowed exemptions for state-collected jurisdictions. The financial impact of allowing ordinance or adoption of Ordinance 0826, excluding the sales tax, is estimated to be less than 1% of our budgeted revenue. The town does not currently track revenue by individual exemption categories, so we did conservative estimates, a possible revenue loss of around 15 to 20,000, with exemption S being the higher dollar amount, around 14,000 is our estimate, and with the exemption T around 4,000. So the listed advantages and disadvantages were listed in the memorandum as well, but the advantages being supports the town's commitment to a family-friendly community, provides modest cost saving for essential items, reduces the tax burden that's viewed as inequitable for our women and families, and it does align with the state policy. A disadvantage would be it would reduce some of our sales tax revenue for town services and projects. And based on the positive feedback that was received during that study session on March 24th, it was also staff's recommendation to adopt these two exemptions, as it doesn't pose a significant financial risk. And it shows our commitment, alignment with our commitment to support our family-friendly community. And with that, I'm open to any questions that I have from the board.
If there's any public comment on this item, and I see none. Board members, trustees, any questions, comments?
got a-
Trustee Eshelman.
Real quick one, and it's not pertaining to this, but it's still the sales tax. Refresh my memory, is like diabetic supplies, is that in Estes Park currently exempt from sales tax? Because I know it is in other parts of the state, and I should know this because I have a diabetic child, but it's been a few years.
Pharmaceuticals or of any kind? Or?
Okay,
Do not believe there are taxes on pharmaceuticals in Estes Park.
you
So
don't think there
over-the-counter-
are?
Over-the-counter, prescription medications are not taxed.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, I'll indicate that all reports, statements, exhibits, and written communications that were presented are accepted as part of the record, and the public hearing is closed, and I'll take a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 08-26.
And I'll second.
Trustee Brown moved to approve this item, and Trustee Mears seconded. Any further discussion? We can vote. There you go.
Thank you.
Good. We'll move on to item ordinance 926. This will also be a public hearing. Consenting to the inclusion of certain properties located within the town of Estes Park into the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy's municipal sub-district. And again, at this hearing, we'll consider all information presented during the public hearing from town staff, et cetera. As stated before, any member of the board may ask questions at any stage of the public hearing, which may be responded to at that time, and the public hearing is open. And we have Director Bergston up here from Utilities.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. Tonight before you is, I'm sorry, I was trying to get the presentation. You opened a public hearing?
Yes, it is open.
Okay, thank you. I was sitting here focused on the presentation. That threw me, So tonight we're asking you to consider two ordinances that will allow the properties that are currently not within the Northern Colorado District, Conservancy District, and Northern Colorado Municipal Subdistrict to be added to their districts. So the Colorado state law allows this to happen within the town limits by getting the consent from the governing board to basically consenting to those properties being included into these boundaries. If you pass this ordinance, it would go on to the Northern Board and the Municipal Subdistrict Board for their consideration. So I'm going to give you some quick background. Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District was formed in 1937. I don't know much about the Dust Bowl era, but it was in the early 30s. So there was a big need to bring additional waters over from the western slope to the eastern slope to support the agricultural business of the eastern slope. So the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation went into a contractual agreement with Northern to operate the facilities, and currently the town has 1,217 units. The municipal sub-district was formed in 1970 by 6 municipalities, Estes Park being one of them. That municipal sub-district is actually governed by the Northern Board also, and the town owns 3 units of Windy Gap water, which is equivalent to 300 acre-feet. And so this is a quick map. The present situation, you can see some of these properties highlighted in blue are not either in the district or within the sub-district. But they are, you can see in the black line is the town boundary. So these properties that are within the town boundary, this ordinance will allow the northern boards to consider bringing those properties into the districts. So then again, the Colorado state law authorizes the town to pass an ordinance presented before you tonight. That's the 09 and 10 of 2026, consenting to the inclusion of these properties that are gaps within the town's boundary to be included in the district's boundaries. I have some notes here to remind me to say that you guys have already done this twice before, but this time we are very confident this will go forward. Third time's a charm. This time around, we actually had the experts from Northern District and Sub-District bring their mapping experts in. Our mapping experts got together to actually define the town boundary, which surprisingly has never been done up until a few months ago, and reconciled the numbers. So we have consensus between Northern staff and us that these are the all-inclusive and complete list of properties to be included. With that, I can take questions.
I will ask if there is any public comment on this item. Oh, and everything went blank, but it's back.
Sorry.
Trustees, questions, comments?
Yeah, I do not understand what the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy does or how this affects the property owners involved here. I must not have been on the board when it came the two prior times, because I don't remember ever hearing anything about this. I'm sure it has something to do with conserving water, but other than that, that's my understanding of it. So can you help?
It has a lot to do with managing the western slope water that's being brought over and used on the eastern slope. So that's a federal infrastructure that was built in the 30s, conceptualized actually originally even back as late as the 1880s from the state, but brought to fruition in 1937, built the Alva B. Adams Tunnel. But that facility and managing where the water goes, who gets the water, that requirement, that workload was handed off to the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District that was formed.
So
Now
they
that-
make sure that people with water rights get their water, basically.
The people like us that have rights or allocations to these units of water, they're properly, the bookkeeping is kept such that everybody gets the water that they are entitled to. The people that have priority get their water first. There's a lot of complexities, and if you want to sit down and listen to Greg White explain a whole lot more detail. However, I will say there is this other one item that you mentioned. The Northern District is, both districts have taxing authority or levy property taxes. The Northern District does levy a 1 mil tax, property tax. So it's essentially a $1 million home would pay $1,000 a year in taxes.
Okay, so it's the due process aspect is to enable the property tax to be applied to these properties.
That is the due process, and now people can show up and show cause to not be included in the district. That's the purpose of the public meetings at this board meeting and the following one.
So the property tax, though, supports the administration of this, which sounds like it's largely an accounting type thing where you're.
It's maintenance too. I mean, yeah, it's the whole picture of
maintenance of the distribution somehow.
And bonding, they have bonding authority, so they can go out for bonds.
And do they deal with the water courts then too?
Yes, in fact, I might be stretching myself here, but I think the board members are actually assigned by the water courts. No. Oh, see,
You are stretching.
that's why Greg's.
Got the expert here.
Trustee Brown, I would have to suggest that since we have Greg White in the building,
Yes,
and we
yes.
have board members who are not entirely familiar with the Northern District, that we have Greg give a brief primer.
Yeah, he caught me before the meeting and said, ask a lot of questions to justify me coming up for this. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
so that's what I'm doing.
So, let's talk about the tax, first of all. It's 1 mil for the Northern District. That's the CBT project. The sub-district owns the water rights for the Windy Gap project, and they do not have, at the present time, a mill levy, and probably never will. Now, you ask, what is that used for? Well, mainly it's used for the maintenance of the Big Thompson project. You have in town, you have the power plant here, you have Lake Estes, you have the penstock, you have Mary's Lake, we have Carter Lake, Horseshoe Lake, all the distribution facilities, Grand Lake, Shadow Mountain, over on the western slope. So the district, that mill levy, they maintain those facilities on behalf of the United States government. So that's mainly where that money goes to. So.
And that's, that assures the proper distribution of the water.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So the Northern District has a contract with the United States government that they operate the system and they also allocate the water rights.
So the Northern District, is that the entire county?
No, the Northern District exists, it exists from basically the start of the mountains, down where the siphon is, if you go down 34.
Okay.
And it encompasses the irrigated lands on the Poudre River, Big Thompson River, St. Vrain River, and Boulder Creek. And it's a big funnel where they go into the South Platte River. That's part of the district, all the way to Julesburg.
Oh, so it's huge.
Yes, it's a big.
So the taxing district is much larger than just
Yes.
the county?
Yes.
Okay, I was trying to figure out with a 1 mil levy, how you come up with enough money to make this happen, and
Yes.
it's gotta be that.
And as property taxes have increased, or property value has increased, the Northern District has done quite well, by the way, since 1937.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Like, as far as the taxes, so when, when you petition to get inside the Northern District, you have to pay not only the petition process to take that to the board, to the courts, et cetera, but you have to pay your back taxes, back 1 mil levy on your property back to 1937. So now, that is not as big as number as you think it is. There's a formula for each property. So if you're an individual property seeking to go into the Northern District, you file the petition, and as part of that process, you pay a fee. You pay a $400 processing fee plus the back taxes to get into the district. Now, the town, with these properties that are affected in the town, we are paying the process fee and we're paying the back taxes.
Oh.
So individual property owners will receive the benefits of being in the Northern District without any of the expenses.
And in the future, then they will be
Yes.
paying the property tax,
They will.
just in the future.
In the future, yes. Once it's actually included in the district, it takes a court order to do that. Once that court order is recorded, then the next taxing, it'll be the next taxing year.
Do we know kind of the aggregate cost to the town of doing this?
No, I don't, I can't count with, but we've calculated that. I don't have it in my.
You don't have it, but,
No.
but it's manageable.
Yeah. Also, we've negotiated the fee with the Northern District. We're not paying $400 per.
Oh, sure.
Per
property.
Per property.
Yeah.
So, we're just gonna pay $400 for the whole thing. So.
Thank you.
If we were to pass 0926 and the subsequent one in the next public hearing, 1026, are there any leftovers after that, or does that cover
Hopefully not.
everything that's in the town, current town
Everything's in the
boundaries?
town, yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we annex something.
Yeah. One of the things we've done with this ordinance that we didn't do with the previous two ordinances is we've included all properties within the town, including those that are not being served with water by our municipal system. They may be have nothing there, may be vacant. Also, they may be on wells. But the theory is to get everybody in now, so if they do sign up for municipal water, that is done. And they wouldn't have to go through the petition process by themselves.
Trustee Eshelman.
I didn't know if I was up next or not with all the red lights up here. And correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, that it's actually a legal requirement if technically you want to be served water to your home.
Yes. I don't want to go into the whole history here because we could go on for hours, but technically to receive town water, which includes both Windy Gap water and CBT water, plus some direct flow rights, we have some other sources. We don't calculate that water as it goes into the pipe. It's mixed. We do a mixture depending on what we need. Technically, you're not to receive that water unless you're in the district and the sub-district. So we're catching up with this project in order to get everybody in the district and the sub-district so that we're not subject to turning off water to people that are not in the district or the sub-district. And this is the first step in a long process. If we get this done with these two ordinances, the sub-district and the district within the town, then we start outside the town. But we don't have the same ability to do that by ordinance. That's going to take a petition process where we have to go out and get signatures on a petition for both the district and the sub-district and move forward on our own to go to court to get them into the district and the sub-district. That's next. And hopefully within the next year or so, we'll have this all done and you don't have to see me much anymore.
So it sounds like Northern has really helped streamline the process, because I know at one point it was kind of an insurmountable mountain, and it's been many years coming to this.
Yeah, and the reason for it is that the district was formed in 1937 when the boundary was down there at the dam store. In 1968, the town petitioned to get in the district, and we were an island. So that's why we're not, this is unique to the town, not Loveland, not expansion of Loveland, Longmont, Fort Collins. Those properties are always in the district, so they didn't have to go through this. But when Estes Park expanded, it expanded in areas that were never in the district. So that's why we're catching up.
And one more quick thing. People can, as we do this all-encompassing thing, and they absolutely see no need for their use in the future, they can petition out of the district. Is that correct? If they want to?
If they want to, yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
To piggyback on that, so good timing that we were back to back, that in the memo, you had made a note, or there was a note about that property owners might be a little bit wary about being included in this additional district, but in theory, this secures legally for them water rights for their property and their property value, right? So that's the benefit to them, is to make sure that.
The benefit is that they would be able, they can get water rights from the town.
Right.
Yeah.
So not only are we legally required, but it also makes sure that for the future of that property, that they can get water.
If you're not in the district or the subdistrict right now, and you want to tap for water through our municipal system, you have to sign a petition to get that, and that has to go through the Northern District and the subdistrict, right, individually, and you have to pay that cost. So we're trying to get at least everybody in town that don't have to do that.
Great, thanks.
Trustee Lancaster.
Yeah, one thing that we're a little off, I think Ruben was a little bit off on the
Yeah,
taxes.
it isn't that much.
No, it actually, for $1 million home, would be about $60 a year. Because you got to remember that it's the assessment rate, it's not the value. So you go by the assessment rate, and it comes out somewhere around $60 or less for $1 million home. And of course, proportionally less if your house is worth less than that. So it's not a lot of money on the property taxes.
Other questions?
And just to remind you, Ruben, we're doing this in two sessions. And the idea is to give everybody an opportunity to come in and protest or ask questions, namely the citizenry. So that's why we're doing 2 separate times. And what we're asking for tonight is just for you to table this until the meeting on the 26th, when you can adopt the ordinance. That just gives everybody an opportunity to come in. And one of the reasons is especially for the district, these properties, when they bring them in the district, they have to go through the NEPA process through the federal government to be accepted. And that's a laborious process. The district does that in batch. But the federal government wants to know that there's been a proper, public hearings, et cetera. So that's why we're doing 2 hearings on these ordinances.
All right. All reports, statements, exhibits, and written communications presented are accepted as part of the record. This public hearing is closed, and I'll take a motion on 09. We did. I asked for that right after Ruben's presentation.
I move to continue ordinance 09-26 to May 26, 2026.
Second.
Was that a second? Oh, okay. Mayor Pro Tem Hazelton moved to continue. 926, Trustee Brown seconded. We can vote. And it passes, and we will move on to the very similar 1026, consenting to the inclusion of certain properties located within the town of Estes Park into the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District. Again, at this hearing, same thing, all the information the Board of Trustees will consider includes the from town staff during the public hearing, public comment and written comments received on the item. And any member of the board can ask a question at any stage of the public hearing. This public hearing is open. And is there further presentation? No other maps or things, so we've seen it all. All right, in that case, any public comment on 1026? I see none. Questions and comments from the board, Trustee Brown?
So as I understand it, there will be some cost to the town of doing this. Is that budgeted, or I presume we'll have to come back and appropriate those funds eventually?
I will say that these lawyers are really good at earning their keep. So thank you very much for asking that question. Yes, actually, we have $71,658 available as of November 3rd. And that should be plenty to be able to get through the process. If not, we'll probably be coming back to ask for more.
Okay, so it's already budgeted, so we don't have to reapprove it. It's within that. Okay, thank you.
All right. Based on that, all of the information presented, we have accepted into the public hearing, and this public hearing is closed. And I would take a motion.
I'll move to continue ordinance 1026 to a future date.
I'll second.
Trustee Eshelman moved to continue 1026. Trustee Mears seconded, and we'll vote on that. All right, good to go. Thanks, fellows. We will move on to report and discussion items, and I believe that we have Manager Speedlin Carling, 2025 Impact Report for 60 Workforce Housing and Child Care Lodging Tax Funds, and I think you'll be up there for the next item, too.
All right, let me make sure I have everything set up. All right, well, Hi, new trustees. It's nice to see you guys up here, and I'm really excited to be able to share with you this evening the impact of 6E lodging tax now in its third year of implementation and how it's continued to support workforce housing and childcare initiatives in the Estes Valley. This report is more than just a financial summary. You're seeing my notes. I do have to script myself sometimes. It's a reflection of how our community is investing in itself. It highlights where funds are going, what outcomes we're seeing, and how these investments are strengthening workforce stability and long-term economic resilience. And that ding reminded me that Executive Director Moulton is on the call virtually, so he'll be here to answer any of your questions. But going back to the annual timeline, we are in Q1. We're actually in Q2, but this is the time of year where we demonstrate and summarize what happened in the year before. It does feel like it's halfway through this year, because it is. It's mid-May. And however, because of the remittance of the lodging tax, we actually don't see our December numbers till March. And then with the turnover of the board, we did decide to wait until you guys were all seated and present this information. So we'll continue to have the goal and the intent of presenting this information in Q1. Hopefully, you know, whether it be the second meeting in March or the first meeting in April, but this year it does feel a little late. With it being late, we're going to turn right around and go back out to our stakeholder outreach and start planning for 2027. Every year we do a nice, robust survey, one-on-one conversations with our stakeholders. We review the reports from all of our funding recipients, and again, look at all of our foundational documents to make sure we're on track. So, but this is the exciting part where we get to see what's happening. So going back to the basics, what is 6E? Back in November 2022, voters approved a ballot initiative 6E to increase our local lodging tax from 2% to 5.5%. That increase generates about $6 million annually. It was anticipated to bring in about $5 million, but over the last few years, we're close to $6 million. And those funds are dedicated specifically to workforce housing and childcare. The funding model is intentional, and in a tourism-driven economy like Estes Park, we welcome over 4 million visitors each year. This tax allows visitors to help support the infrastructure that keeps our community functioning. Housing and childcare are essential to that infrastructure, of course. Without them, businesses can't retain employees, families can't stay in the community, and the economic stability becomes harder to sustain. The town serves as the steward of these funds, so it goes to Visit Estes Park, transfers to the town, which is why my role was created shortly after the initiative was passed in '22. And then we transfer funds and work closely with the Estes Park Housing Authority on those housing initiatives. We work together to ensure that investments are aligned with the voter intent. Everything goes through that filter of the ballot language, as well as community priorities, as those have already, we're seeing, evolved over time. As I mentioned, our total lodging tax has increased over the years. In 2025, the total revenue was about $10.5 million. Again, 2% of that stays with Visit Estes Park, our local marketing district, which extends out of town limits. That's important to remember too. These funds go back into the community outside of just the town and includes greater Larimer, or later Larimer County as well. And 3.5% is transferred to the town for these initiatives. So in 2025, we generated just shy of $6 million at 5.99. We're in a good place where tourism remains stable in 2025. We actually saw an increase of about 6.4% from 2023 to 2024. And then right around the same amount, 6.2% from 2024 to 2025. And as we've heard already, a few months into 2026, those trends continue to be increasing along that same path of about 6%. Throughout the year, This is how just that 3.560 funds were brought in, also similar to what we'd be seeing at just general lodging tax numbers throughout the year. So tourism and lodging generally slowed across Colorado compared to post-COVID rebound, but the revenue remains consistent and reliable, and we're building our programs for housing and childcare under that kind of premise. Peak season, as you know, is considered June through October, with September being the highest month of lodging tax revenue year over year. This chart kind of demonstrates that year over year. So you see the teal line is 2023, 2024, and then some blips in 2025. And then this is the breakdown of allocation of funds between 2023, 2024, and 2025. You'll note that the town does retain a certain amount of funds year over year for my role in operations in general, work that we do as the key stewards of those funds. So in 2025, about $4.7 million went to workforce housing. $1.2 million was retained by the town and distributed for childcare initiatives. And then again, just a portion, just a little bit over $100,000 was retained for program administration and operations. In 2025, there was a kind of their big first shift in allocation of 6E funds between housing and childcare initiatives. Sorry, that didn't transfer right with the years there on the side. But in 2023 and 2024, the split was 88% directed to workforce housing, 12% for childcare. It was agreed that we could kind of move some of those funds to childcare, so it was 80-20 in 2025. With that, childcare funding nearly doubled from $678,000 in allocated revenue to $1.2 million in 2025, which again reflects some of that growing and evolving need, as well as a strategic shift in our priorities. That shift only reduced the allocation of funds for housing by about $150,000 because we saw that increase in overall revenue. So they didn't take too much of a hit. Even though they're our childcare greatest supporters over there at the Housing Authority, they were excited to see those revenues stay intact. So again, under the initial ballot language, there were priorities that were within that framework. We still work within the premise of those within those priorities. We have tuition assistance, supporting the child care workforce, out-of-school programs or school-age programs, as well as facility expansion. The 2025, or on an annual basis, when we do our annual funding plan, we also create those objectives under the same priorities and initiatives. So tuition assistance, it's a big one. If you've been on the board, we have a few conversations a year regarding tuition assistance and funding. We are in a really great spot as a community because we've been able to be adaptive and reactive to a lot of things that are happening outside of our control as a community. Since 2023, we've expanded access to assistance significantly. A new middle income program was launched in August of last year, meaning that working families earning up to 100% of the area median income were also eligible for financial assistance. Since 2023, the percentage of children receiving assistance increased from 21% to 55%. And that's based on the children that are in care, receiving care. So not total population. The annual funding distributed toward affordability and tuition assistance programs more than doubled from 2023. It's, of course, a major shift. It means that more families can stay in the workforce, more children have access to care when other assistance programs such as CCAP are frozen or other programs are falling short. It highlights ongoing challenges. Child care providers are still pricing significantly below the true cost of care. Tuition assistance supports that, but we're still relying on, they're still relying on subsidies and grants to stay afloat. A full evaluation of the tuition assistance programs will be presented at the end of the year because we'll have gone through full cycles of funding with the new evaluation criteria. So that'll be coming later on this year. we have a nice story of impact. That increased eligibility has definitely supported families who have multiple children in care, and are spending up to 20-30% of their monthly income on childcare. The middle income tuition assistance program caps that out at 10% as a parent fee. So parents would be paying a more appropriate and affordable fee. When it comes to the childcare workforce, we've made strong progress since 2023 in stabilizing the childcare workforce. We adopted an annual subsidy and now call it the Child Care Stability Initiatives. Providers with those funds are able to increase wages, offer benefits, and improve staff retention. Overall, we've seen just a lot of comments about how we've been able to retain teachers over time. It allows programs to serve more children consistently, regardless of enrollment. As a seasonal community, we see ebbs and flows of work, people getting called off work during some of our low seasonal times during the winter. That affects childcare, that affects enrollment. So being able to provide stability funding allows them to keep staff on regardless of those fluctuations throughout the year. Wages still lag behind the cost of living. We're especially hearing that from part-time and entry-level roles. So progress is real, but we have continued investment that's needed. And it's exciting to announce or to share that the town is participating in a childcare workforce learning lab with the University of Denver with other Colorado communities, that we're all kind of bringing all of our subsidy and workforce related strategies together and evaluating those. And so we'll be able to bring that back and learn from other communities as well as share what we've learned from our initiative. When it comes to out-of-school programming, we have expanded support through direct grants for after-school and summer programs, as well as non-school day programs. Funding went directly to those community partners, Boys and Girls Club, YMCA of the Rockies, which has allowed them to extend hours, add service days, and serve more children. This obviously impacts working families because we know childcare needs don't end when they go to school, as we have dealt with, professional development Mondays and snow days and all that kind of stuff. It requires a lot of flexibility. One of the recipients of funding was the YMCA. The inclusion program there offers essential special ed programming during the summer months, and funding received from the town allowed them to hire a well-qualified special ed lead counselor and support staff to be able to serve those children during the summer where otherwise that support doesn't exist within our community. When it comes to facilities and long-term planning, we laid the groundwork for childcare expansion through developing a formal capital grant program. We purchased the Mountaintop Childcare Facility, preserving 40 childcare preschool spots. We did take a loan from the general fund to ensure we weren't depleting, our first year of revenue, and we've repaid that in 2025. So that shows up in our use of funds. The next item on your agenda tonight is the Child Care Facility Master Plan, which was an objective for us to really figure out what the town's role in financing these projects are, is having a portfolio of facilities and leasing those. So we'll dive into that more next. But we're hitting all the marks with what our strategies were, whether that be from our needs assessment and strategic plan and from our 60 initiatives. So overall, our distribution of funds throughout the year, we distributed over $650,000 directly back into the community. Over half of that did go to childcare affordability tuition assistance, which results in a system that has become more accessible, more stable, and better positioned for future growth. All right, pivoting over to housing initiatives.
Could I interrupt with a question?
Yes, please.
So do you have figures on how many children were served, like with respect to the first one, the tuition assistance, and how many workers were impacted by the workforce one? And I mean, I think it would be helpful for the community to know how many we're talking about, particularly when we have declining enrollment at the school, And the whole idea behind this is to encourage families to be here so that we want to, reverse that trend, hopefully.
Yeah. I can provide some of those numbers for participation of the different programs, whether that be number of kids enrolled in tuition assistance. That, of course, will be included in the more robust evaluation of tuition assistance.
Okay.
But as far as some of the other programs and stuff, I'd be happy to include that in the
I
final
just
report.
think on an ongoing basis, the reporting of that would be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Be
That
happy to
means
do
more to people than the numbers.
Yep. Thanks for that suggestion.
Trustee Mears.
Thanks. Can I add on to that, just that, I think in the past report that we had, it gave goals. And it'd be great to see if we're actually building up to those goals.
Yep.
Great.
Can do that.
But by the same token, when we look at those numbers of the children impacted, families impacted, workforce members impacted, it's so important to remember that this is feeding the roots that helps the entire community. It's not just that the workforce and the children and the families impacted are getting help to do this. This creates and grows the infrastructure for the whole town. We all benefit from it. There are so many municipalities that would love to have a 6E. And I think it was visionary of the community to pass that in 2022 because it does. It's growing it from the roots for all of us.
Yeah. And thank you for those suggestions. I'll provide some more pinpointed data and metrics to kind of demonstrate where we've gone the last few years. Thanks. So looking at housing initiatives in those key priority areas, like I mentioned, this is similar, defined areas that came from that initial ballot language. Land acquisition, development, financial assistance programs, as well as staffing and operations. So property acquisition and preservation, as you may have noticed, that was definitely a key priority in hitting the ground running with that funding. That is why there was such a, that's why 88% was allocated to workforce housing in the initial breakdown, because those initial investments were a key priority. So it was a huge success in 2025 was the impact of acquisitions that were actually completed in late 2024. So that included that Fall River Village, as well as Beaver Brook. These projects added over 100 workforce housing units that are deed restricted to the workforce. It prevented displacement into the short-term rental market, as well as preserved long-term affordability. This is strategic, converting existing lodging into workforce housing rather than relying solely on new construction, which has only increased over the last few years. Another story of impact, Fall River Village, which is nearly full now. There's people that are working there or living there that work in our community, and it's been really advantageous to, again, the entire community in our sustainability goals and stability of our workforce. Again, things have kind of shifted now to the development pipeline. EPHA has acted as a developer for a number of projects and made progress on future housing with the pre-development work advancing at multiple sites, including acting as a developer for town-owned land. They were working on 179 Stanley, which is town-owned property, as well as Fish Hatchery neighborhood. 134 deed-restricted units are currently in the pre-development phase development pipeline. So, but at the same time, I wanted to note that challenges remain with high interest rates, construction costs, community opposition, and just, making sure that we're hearing all of the voices and opinions and how to proceed through that the development of workforce housing. Assistance programs, workforce rental assistance program transitioned from what was a pilot program in 2024 to a fully implemented program in 2025. Served 32 households and distributed over $157,000 in assistance directly to those households. The program itself it can either provide a one-time grant to support down payments or deposits on a rental, or broken down into monthly $400 deduction in rent. So It's now a stable tool to help bridge the affordability gap of local workers. You'll note in the full report that there's been even attrition, and we've seen people that have been able to utilize that program and move on typically because they've been able to get a job that pays higher and allows them to do that in a sustainable fashion. In addition to direct assistance to families, additional funding totaling up to $1 million was set aside last year for future programs, including down payment assistance, which should be launched this year. So again, that monthly subsidy has made a huge improvement. The application for that program, if anyone's listening online or in the audience, you can access that through Crossroads, who's administering the program for Estes Park Housing Authority. This was brought up when we did our 2026 funding plan. The objective and goal under administration and used to be staffing. Of course, bringing in such a large funding mechanism required them to increase their staff. They are now staffed up, so we won't be receiving updates on that necessarily, but there are definitely other administrative costs that we'll be bringing back to you as far as how that's going to be allocated in future years and then how that's going to be distributed. So it's exciting. We now know that there are systems in place, capacity is built, and future funding can focus more directly on delivering housing initiatives. And here's the breakdown of their distribution throughout the year. Of the nearly $2.5 million distributed for land banking, 63% went to support existing workforce housing, ensuring low rental rates and housing stability. And again, that's described in more detail in the report. So overall, EPHA operated over 330 workforce housing units. They added more than 100 new units through acquisition, expanded seasonal housing options for the first time. So we have seasonal housing in Fall River Village this summer, so some shorter term rentals there. I think there's almost 30 seasonal employees at Fall River Village this summer. Yeah, so that's exciting. Overall outcomes, we're looking at, stability, revenue is consistent, knock on wood. Programs are established and we're now looking to scale. Investments are reaching more families and workers. And then we're looking at, strategy and the efforts, making sure efforts are coordinated across both housing and childcare. We really are looking at things holistically whenever we're working at workforce housing. How can childcare align with this? And then how are things like workforce rental assistance supporting our childcare workforce and making sure that all of those things are coordinated. It's important to remember that housing and childcare are not separate challenges and they are interconnected. And 6E is helping to address both in a coordinated and sustainable way. And as Mayor Hall, you mentioned, we are in a really great position to be able to create a foundation of stability for our workforce, even though we are seeing fluctuations in our community population. So, thank you. And like I said, I do have Scott on the line if we have any questions specific to housing. Otherwise, the draft you received is kind of the rough, not rough because that will be available, but we'll also do a printed handout version that will be available to the public and have some other graphics and such.
Great report. Other questions or comments? If not, you can segue to item 2.
Oh boy. No questions, comments? Okay. Get a gold star.
Well, they reserve the right to ask about either of the 2 topics.
All right. And we are going to transition because our consultants, there we go. They're meeting with us virtually. Are they on the line?
I am here, and so is Joe. I'm not sure if you're able to see us on a screen interior to the room there.
We can't. We'll be seeing in here. Oh, there you are. You can say hi real quick.
Hello.
All right.
We'll introduce ourselves in just a moment once Carly is done with the beginning of the presentation.
Thanks. All right, and then we can switch to the slides. All right, so nice little segue. I was like, this is a nice presentation of what we've done and where our next objectives are, which is a strong focus and we've stabilized the workforce. We have some assistance programs built up. The next step, it was really looking at, okay, now what are we gonna do? We have a foundation. What are the next steps and what is the town's role in those next steps, specifically with this funding? And so we're gonna be presenting a draft, I want to reiterate that it is a draft, of the child care facility master plan, which includes best practices for your consideration. And the work, as you've seen, was completed in partnership with EPIC, which is the executives partnering to invest in children. And we also have Joe from Zanone Project Management to help us and to help guide the town's role in supporting the development of child care facilities in the Estes Valley. In introduction, we had Alethea, Colorado Executive Director for EPIC, as well as Joe on the call. And just to summarize, this is in your packet, in your memo. The objective of tonight's presentation is to introduce this plan, as well as walk through the recommended policy actions and gather your feedback. It also positions the town to meet grant requirements. This is funded from DOLA, from a DOLA grant, and part of that is to present the draft publicly. So that's why we're here tonight. And again, it might feel like a quick turnaround this summer because we wanted to present this to one complete board rather than presenting it prior and then asking for feedback on policy changes and then coming back. So my apologies for that, but if there's additional questions outside of what's going on today, you're always welcome to reach out. So what is a child care facility master plan? So as I mentioned in the impact report, this is really the next step in supporting the capital and facilities objective under the 6E funding plan, as well as strategic investment in child care facilities, which was defined and identified in the needs assessment and strategic plan that was conducted in 2024. Our goal is to approach these investments strategically, and up to this point, the town's role has largely been reactive in responding to child care facility needs, as you've seen when we come up with, startup requests or purchasing a facility that's up for sale and needing to retain that. We're to a place where a master plan is going to help us establish a more proactive and coordinated, guide for future investments and decision making. This facility master plan, EPIC has been amazing to work with. The whole team has been amazing to work with. It's going to provide a comprehensive data-informed roadmap designed to guide how the town supports childcare infrastructure moving forward, developed through the DOLA grant in partnership with EPIC. It looks beyond individual projects and instead, so don't get too fixated on individual projects as they're presented tonight. Rather, it aligns with land use, funding strategies, partnerships, operations of those facilities as a more coordinated effort. The goal is to support both near-term action and long-term sustainability. And of course, our present situation, I feel like whenever I think I know what's going on with childcare and housing, there's some kind of demographic shift or assistant change or, something that's going on. So as a reminder, this is a grant that we received to address these things, and we'll continue to have, flexibility and adaptability largely due to having this funding stream. A final presentation is going to come back around to you all in June. I think EPIC will go through this more detailed timeline, but we have an opportunity to have an extension in that in the grant, so we're not going to be forced up against a deadline. Again, to reiterate, this is not happening in a vacuum. There are other objectives that have pushed us to this point, other strategies that have brought this plan to the forefront. So long story short, we asked the board to consider the information that EPIC will present in the next slides and provide, consider that information, provide any feedback, comments that we'd be able to take into the next stage iteration of the master plan. And now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Alethea and Joe.
Great. Thank you. And I can go ahead and share my screen.
Perfect.
Can everyone hear okay?
Awesome. Let's get through to the right piece here. Great. Thank you so much for having us. My name's Alethea Gomez, and don't worry, mastering the pronunciation of my name is not a requirement of the town board tonight, which is amazing. We'll just consider that a bonus venture. I am the executive director of EPIC here in Colorado, and my team had the pleasure of both drafting and leading the legislation that created this local government planning grant, as well as being the chosen planning and implementation partner on behalf of DOLA and the other state level departments that are partnering in this. And we also drafted the best practices that will be under consideration for the town in this process. So we're delighted to support in this endeavor. I'll allow Joe to introduce himself and we'll dive right into the content.
Again, thank you for having us and happy to be part of the team. Joe Zanone, Zanone Project Management. So we primarily focus on delivering design and construction projects.
Thanks, Joe. So
Can we go up a little bit on volume?
I will try, Mayor, but I think it's as high as it can.
Okay.
No
And
worries.
Feel free to use your Shakespearean voices there, presenters. So.
Not a problem. Not a problem at all on my side. So here's a quick look at the agenda that we'll be going through over the next 30 to 40 minutes. We will naturally pause for questions throughout each section. So we do invite board members to comment and offer any inquiries based on what we're presenting, as opposed to a condensed discussion towards the end, which we can also allow per your process. So this work is rooted in, and Carly, I'm getting a little bit of background noise. You may need to mute you all. Just want to make sure that I'm not speaking over anyone and that we can also hear questions as well.
Did that help?
So this work is really born of many of the priorities that Carly just reviewed with you all and is centered around an idea that childcare is essential community infrastructure, not just for children and families and the workforce, but the economy as a whole. So through this facility master plan, we hope to achieve alignment across town leadership of what those priorities indicate as far as the town's role and investment in facilities, as well as the stability of the childcare industry more broadly, using the existing public and private funding sources and contemplating those that may be added to that over the next 5 to 10 years and beyond. We hope to communicate a clear understanding of what the value trade-offs are, what the different barriers, challenges, and considerations are for the town, so that the town board feels confident in this action plan and moving forward towards implementation. We'll also be looking at phasing and capital strategies, as I mentioned previously, and developing that full facility master plan by the end of June, a timeline which we'll review in just a moment. As I mentioned, we have here on the screen just a few of those factors, right, that we hope this master plan will communicate, and some of the drivers behind why this master plan is being pursued, in addition to the passing of 6E, in addition to the ongoing leadership and investments that this community is already making in this industry and its leaders. So let's take a look at the planning process that we've engaged in and what we've accomplished so far. We'll also take a moment here to look at what's still ahead of us, as we still have about 6 to 7 weeks left to work with this team and create our final master plan for you all to review and approve. So in the top right corner here, you can see our planning timeline from the end of March through the end of June. March and April were largely spent on our data and landscape analysis and review. So the overall assessment of childcare supply and opportunities in the community, pitted against the existing population and the listed priorities of this town to help provide direction. In April and May, and really throughout this process, we have been engaging with community stakeholders of all types, leaders, agencies, advocates, organizations, childcare providers, families, in order to ensure that what we are recommending aligns and is realistic with what is reflective of community needs, both now and in the future. And so that's given us a great understanding of what should be prioritized for the town, and the role that the town should play that would be most meaningful to this group of stakeholders. This month, we'll be drafting those recommendations, and I'll go over in just a moment what we have for you today and what we have left to accomplish. And then at June 30th and the beginning of June, we'll have that final master plan for everyone to review. So on the left-hand side, you can see the primary items that we'll be completing as part of this scope. Existing conditions, as I mentioned earlier, taking a look at the overall landscape, which we'll dive deeper into in just a couple of moments. Stakeholder engagement, a full inventory and feasibility analysis relative to both town-owned properties as well as some others in consideration to assess for really the feasibility of childcare. And Joe will cover kind of our methodology and approach to that analysis in a few minutes. Left to do still is policy funding and management strategy, which we're just in process with, and final recommendations. So on the right bottom, you can see those purple boxes, which kind of indicate a few caveats here that we want to make sure we mention to board members. So stakeholder engagement is an ongoing process throughout this engagement. So we still have interviews left to conduct through the end of May that will help to add some color and depth to the recommendations that we're making and some of the assumptions that we have currently around funding needs and meaningful impact for facility investment and development. And as I mentioned previously, funding, timeline, and management is in its final stages. So Joe and I will be meeting with Carly and the rest of the working group that we've identified from town leadership in order to evaluate the cumulative impact. And I know that was already brought up by board members as far as the number of folks impacted, what that really means, right, for local economic growth and stability, and integrate that into the final master plan. Lastly, we got word from DOLA, and I believe they've already notified Carly and team that the planning grant timeline is to be extended. So originally, as you know, the adoption of the best practices and the completion of the master plan was to be completed by the end of June. However, planning and implementation, including the adoption of best practices, will have an extension through either November 26 or March 2027. The preference is still that this is completed by July, and certainly the EPIC team will be completing that master plan within that timeline per our scope. But this kind of releases the pressure valve just a little bit on the town to fully contemplate that master plan and understand how best to implement those best practices within the code review process. All right, any questions about this timeline or the existing place where we are in this project?
Not yet.
All right, we'll pop forward. So let's take a look at what we're learning about your community, Larimer County at large, and the context of the childcare industry within your local economy. This should not be a surprise to anyone. I know this has been an in-depth discussion in this town for many years, but the buzzwords here are access, affordability, workforce, and economic impact, right? Access is a barrier. We know that where the childcare centers are located centrally in Estes Park is convenient, is accessible. But when we think about access, we also think about alignment with community needs. And right now, the town of Estes Park, like most other places in Colorado and surely across the nation, are facing key shortages of infant and toddler care, We'll take a closer look at that data across the next few slides, but that's causing key access issues to families that you hope establish themselves and continue to grow in Estes Park and replace the existing workforce as it begins to exit and turn over the next 10 years. And there's some also challenges relative to affordability. Right now, childcare costs in the town of Estes are about 10 to 11% of median household income. And that actually sits slightly below the state average, which is 15 to 18%. However, it is still a strain and a limiting factor for families in order to access the care that they need to truly engage in the workforce as they choose. So these tuition initiatives and support initiatives you'll see will be a continued recommendation as part of the integrated funding strategy. That's not just relative to facilities, right? But how we think about access and affordability to this service, this critical service for families overall. And families are reporting cost as the primary barrier, no surprise there. But when we support our operators and the places and spaces where childcare happens, we are able to help lower costs and mitigate that in a meaningful way for families. We'll also be recommending a variety of different facility environments that can be invested in that have varying levels of cost to entry and participation for families. And then perhaps most meaningful in the context of long-term goals for the town is workforce and economic impact, right? We have high workforce participation currently right now in the town, and we'll look at sort of commute routes and what might be captured through further and greater levels of investment. And we know that we have meaningful and measurable reduced participation and productivity in the workforce because of childcare barriers. And that also impacts the population of young children today and in the future, which we'll examine in just a moment. So when we assess the economic impact of childcare, and this is a look at the county level, as we move forward through these next few weeks, we'll be contemplating a meaningful figure for GDP share of Larimer County and Estes Park to refine these numbers further. But we have a reliable economic formula to assess what is lost on an annual basis across key impact categories when childcare is not sufficient, when it is not being invested in directly. Who loses out? And how does that impact our short and long-term goals relative to economic growth and stability? So we contemplate that in three ways. Impacts on families through lost earnings and reduced workforce participation, as I just mentioned, on employers through those same factors, and of course on the taxpayer base in the town itself, right? Increasing public costs, reducing tax revenue overall, and creating some larger losses there. So in Larimer County, which we know is a very expansive geography, that's over $110 million a year that's lost as a result of this. So when we pit that against, $5 to $10 million over 10 years invested in an industry like this, we see an incredible return that can be contemplated as a result of that investment. So here's some of the commute routes that we looked at, both in Larimer County and comparatively the town of Estes Park. And you can see on the right-hand side, about 1,400 folks live and work in Estes Park, but far more are living outside of the town and commuting in to work in your town. And about the same amount that live and work in Estes Park are living there, but commuting outside of the town to work. Now that 2,600 and those 1,400 folks that aren't living and working in Estes Park, the idea is that through creating a stronger foundation for childcare infrastructure in your community, you can ultimately recapture those folks. Some of the folks that are living outside may then have the confidence to live inside and work inside Estes Park, reducing those cost losses that I just previewed on the previous slide. And those that are living in Estes Park but working outside, having childcare near their home is also convenient, right? When we pull thousands of employees in the workforce across this state and across the nation, it goes about half and half, right? Folks prefer childcare close to home or close to school. So investing in this infrastructure has real dollar implications and real population implications, especially when we think about the workforce. When we took a look at the industry mix, where are people working? What type of industries are dominant? We see that there's a high reflection of requirement of in-person full-time workforce in Estes Park. And what that means, again, referencing the previous slide, is that when we create that infrastructure here in the town, we are actually addressing the needs of the majority of the workforce, right? While some folks may work remotely, have more flexibility, I think we all learned during the pandemic that even when we work from home and have more flexibility, caring for our children while simultaneously completing our work is a challenge, right? And there is a threshold at which parents either reduce their participation in the workforce overall or exit the workforce entirely. So to maintain these industries that drive the economic engine of the town of Estes, childcare investment and infrastructure investment is a critical priority that must be contemplated. Here's a snapshot of the population trends, both of children 0 to 6 and some of the older populations in Estes Park. And what we're seeing, not unlike the rest of the state and the rest of the country, is a steady decline in the population of young children. And that's for a number of different reasons, right? Including family confidence, as well as access to childcare. However, the 55 and up community is growing also at a steady and exponential rate of about 16% from 2010 to 2020. And looking at the both state demographers' anticipated data trends as well as our own research, we would expect that to continue to decline for young children and continue to grow for older adults. What that is not doing is replacing your workforce infrastructure in the key industries that you depend on, right? So as younger children begin to decline, we want to invest in things that will draw those families in, create confidence to have children and grow their families in the way they choose, and help to support the services that your older adults will continue to need as they move from 55 to age 70 and choose to stay in your community. So whether you are a retirement community, a tourism community, or a place where you want a plethora of young families, childcare plays an important and central role in the success and support of those populations. All right, here we're taking a look at the density of population of young children across the different geographies within the limits of the town. And so the darker the color, the higher the density, with 211 being the highest swath here towards the south end of town. Now, you may look at this map initially, and if you knew nothing else about community context, you may think, oh my gosh, all of the potential childcare centers represented here as the black squares are in the middle of town. And the highest density of childcare, which is this large blue area, has no childcare centers. In addition to that, the colored dots that you see are the primary properties that we've evaluated for feasibility for childcare, and they're far away from that population too. But we have some good news on that. In our community stakeholder conversations, it's very clear that of those 211 children and those in the surrounding areas, folks are absolutely willing to travel to the center of town and where you see these colored dots in order to access care, right? Might be a little grumpier during the winter to do so, but it's not coming up as a primary challenge. And so this shows us that we have some opportunities within that blue area to think about other types of environments where childcare happens, such as family childcare homes, smaller type centers, and we have some key expansion and development recommendations for both the black squares and the colored dots, namely Mountaintop, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Any questions about the data, the evaluation of economic factors within this presentation and master plan?
Well, while it's a big chunk of blue down there, it's not long distances in Estes Park. So
Correct.
we do have that advantage, even though it's clustered in the center for the even the places that you might be looking at considering. So it's not too prohibitive. And we know that most of those are probably single family homes when you stretch out into the blue, the farther you go in the blue. Anyway, just a comment.
Thank you, sir.
It would be nice to have that map as more of a heat map as to where the families are and the density of the children.
Absolutely. We can produce a secondary map that shows heat concentration. That's totally fine.
If we could get more information about how many people who live and work in Estes versus how many people live and work in Estes and how many people live outside of and work in Estes actually have families, that would be helpful too.
Yeah, that was a fascinating slide, the one that showed. I didn't quite know those numbers. I know we have a whole lot of commuters coming in and some commuters going out. I didn't realize it was so much higher coming in than going out, but I would have guessed that.
Thank you. And yes, we have a more expansive analysis of the demographics of that population, which will be included in the final master plan. And we'll review that with our town working group as well to ensure that we've met the mark there.
Great, thank you.
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, Estes Park right now, when we look at childcare supply and availability versus population, is facing shortages at what we think of as key entry and retention ages, which is infant and toddler. Across the market, we have a dependable trend where we can think about if a family has an infant and is able to secure care for their infant by the time they are 12 months or between 6 months and 12 months, the likelihood is that they will stay in care, that they will stay in the workforce, and they will be retained for longer periods of time in your community. When folks enter at the late toddler stages or at the preschool stages, we see a lot more attrition of the population and the workforce because children age up, they age out, and folks move to different opportunities. We also see infant toddler supply linked directly to family confidence and birth rates. Where we have higher density and availability of infant and toddler care, we have more babies. Go figure, right? And when they get into care, at that stage, we see greater levels of confidence in the care system overall and workforce engagement. So on the left-hand side, you can see the town of Estes, and for your analysis and review, we've included Larimer County numbers just as a brief comparison. So as you can see over here on the bottom side of the table, there's an estimated capacity as a percent of the total population of children in that age groups, which is listed there across the bottom. And while it's not a massive difference, right, 19 population of 0 to 18 months and 5 childcare slots, this is going to matter because we want that number of infant and toddler populations to go up, right? If we look at Larimer County as a whole, the town of Estes just has a minute share of that total population. And Larimer County is facing shortages of their own, right? And we'll integrate the ballot measure initiative and those associated funds into our overall financial recommendations here as well. And so those are key shortages that impact longevity and engagement for families.
I've got a question here. If you can go back to that slide. The slide says population and access to licensed childcare. And
correct.
Clearly you got the friends and family sort of childcare, the unlicensed homes, and
correct.
How are those factored in, and have you been able to get data on those?
Yeah, so that that's much harder to track. As you know, family, friend, and neighbor care is not something that has a dependable data source currently. One of our upcoming interviews with the EVIX organization should give us more detailed insight into where those families are as we've assessed the demographics, as I mentioned earlier, to the kind lady that asked a question. And we'll be doing some assumptions there, as it's something that's not actively being tracked. You're right, though. These children are somewhere, right? They're being cared for by someone. And our job is to understand what percentage of that population would be interested in accessing formal care, and also how we can bolster and support the ability of family child care home providers that are unlicensed or family friend and neighbors to be supported to create healthy, high quality environments in a meaningful way through the town's investment and role. Okay. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Joe here for the next couple of slides. He's going to review our overall approach to our feasibility and facility analysis, as well as the models that you'll see included in the draft master plan. Take it away, Joe.
Thanks, Alethea. So we, like Alethea had mentioned, we did a landscape. Some of those properties were highlighted there. There are actually a total of, I believe, 19 on the matrix that is included in the actual draft report and will be part of the final as well. So looked at the overall market of supply of real estate opportunities to produce this resource for the community. We then broke that down and in part based off of available data and available information about what the condition is of some of these assets, and in part based off of location and what kind of fits the operating model as well. And we focused on really, let's call it 3.5 model types, because Dry Gulch is really two ways that we're looking at it. So Carly mentioned this before. These are, consider it kind of like a science experiment. What does it look like if we approach this and create this resource in 4 different ways? So Dry Gulch, we're treating 2 different ways. As I assume everybody is aware, city-owned developable land that you guys have talked about other opportunities at this location. We understand maybe there's some concerns about the actual location and the best use, but it still applies for, could we build a school here? And if so, what are the costs for it? Because that's where I come in, right? How much capital is it needed on the front end? And then Alethea and the Epic team fill in, like, what's it going to take to operate it down the line? So there's a plan that we're taking grading into account. We're doing all of these different things that feeds into the size and the capacity of the school that's going to go here. We're also going to take into consideration, because we can build a fairly large building here that probably exceeds the capacity required for the student base. And from what we understand from speaking to stakeholders, there may be a desire to have multiple functions at this location, whether it's a senior center or something along those lines. We're not going to delve into that part of it for you, but we could have that on a plan to say in the future, this is an opportunity to pull multiple capital sources together to create a building that does check the box that we're focused on, which is early childhood education. So it's Dry Gulch. Mountaintop, you're on the building. There are some concerns here, right? It's an older asset. There are some things. That's probably going to be the case for a lot of the existing assets that we can consider, whether it's Mountaintop or another location that comes up in years to come, right? So, so we're evaluating this as an addition. Some site modifications to accommodate outdoor play, and a pretty good renovation on the interior of the existing building, right? So this model is, what do you do if you take an existing asset and renovate it instead of building new like Dry Gulch? And then we'll focus on Presbyterian Church, again, for no specific reason other than the fact that we have a lot of really good information here about the existing layout and the existing condition of the church. There are several others. So what if we partner with a church? It doesn't have to be a church. It can be any kind of private owner, and to redevelop a portion of that building to accommodate the ECE facility, right? So there'll be capital and some schedule and some summary items in the final report that indicate the pros and cons of each one of these models. We hope this informs the board and other stakeholders say which model is most appropriate based off the capital that we believe that we have access to and based off the timeline that we want to accommodate. there's a lot here. Happy to dig into any specifics, but hopefully that's a decent summary.
There were a few others on that map that aren't represented here, like the Vert Co-working and East Side Grocery and stuff that were that we know have been up for sale or whatever. But you're not at this point giving us information on those. That might be later.
So we hope that after the report is delivered through this feasibility process, really, that you can determine a model, and then we can dig into the properties at that moment in time that would be available to fit that specific model that we want to approach. So if you take something like Mountaintop, we don't have to reuse the existing building. This could be kind of more of an urban infill approach. You could, in theory, scrape the building, build a new building, and apply the Dry Gulch model to the Mountaintop property, and then add in a little bit of demo cost to it, right? So this gives you like a full range of like how you could approach depending on what's available at the time, because the market's going to shift over time as well, what's available.
Good.
Okay. Any other questions about this one?
No.
Okay. So here I've kind of touched on a lot of it. Please, like, I know Dry Gulch, we're showing like a drive lane. This is draft. I believe that there's maybe some challenges with that. So this was Needham's team doing their best using Google Maps and the information that was provided from planning and zoning. So don't dig too deep. But this is the type of information that will be in the draft report if you go through that, and will certainly be in the final report as well. So what you're seeing is in the blue. The blue is obviously the construction area. So in Mountaintop, you see gray is the existing building, blue is the addition, and then the brown areas are the outdoor play areas. Obviously, the weather pattern up there too. So one thing that Leafy and the Epic team has really been hitting home is you have a long winter season, and therefore let's make sure we have proper flex spaces on the interior layouts to accommodate indoor and outdoor play areas depending on the seasonality of it. So that'll be shown on the interior Fidel plans as well. We highlight some of like the pros and cons of each property here as well. You know, Dry Gulch has a larger capacity potentially. It seems like it exceeds the information that the Lethean team has been gathering. Presbyterian is kind of like the low-hanging fruit. It's already built. You go through renovation. You don't control that asset directly though, and there's obviously cons associated with that. Okay. Any questions? Lethea?
Yep, I was just going to mention that within the draft existing and in the final master plan, there will be an extensive set of exhibits relative to these models and the properties, including more comprehensive scorecards, anticipated models, and an operational financial pro forma for each one of these as well, reflective of our community stakeholder engagement and aligned with these test fits as well. So a lot more detail for you, just giving you an overview of what's included in the existing draft as it stands.
Yeah, so plans, general schedule requirements, and budget associated with it all. So, okay. Any questions for the board or others?
Carry on.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the adoption of best practices. So based on the data that we've analyzed to date and our conversations with the working group, we have two primary recommendations summarized here on this slide, which you'll see a lot more detail around planning and implementation as we continue to engage with the team over the next month and a half or so. The first recommendation is to adopt a child care friendly land use and zoning framework. Now that can take shape in a few different ways, right? We already know that there's a code analysis and some zoning regulations that are being looked at actively to clear the path, if you will, for childcare facilities to be developed in easier, faster, and more sustainable ways. So that can look like reducing timelines, reducing or waiving fees for these types of developments, and either changing your zoning code as a whole or creating an overlay zone with special considerations and parameters relative to the childcare shortages that exist in this community. So as we look at not only the facility development in general, but the emergence and stability of childcare in your community overall, really building fertile ground for that to happen and making considerations that are potentially special, right, against other businesses for childcare will be a very meaningful way for that investment to continue to provide a return for the town's local economy. The second recommendation that you'll see outlined in the master plan and clarified for you is establishing a public-private childcare infrastructure and partnership strategy. And what that really means is clarifying the role of the town, not only in supporting the workforce and operators directly, as Carly outlined for you earlier, but what is the town's role in supporting facility development and sustainability in the community? What does that mean across the various funding sources that you've already identified, the upcoming funding sources, like from the ballot measure at the county level, and potential private and philanthropic contributors that may have a vested interest in mixed-use development, the support and integration of childcare into the town, and many of the other strategies that we'll discuss. And this includes employers, right? We know that business engagement, business investment is meaningful to many local governments, and that type of partnership is often desired and required in order to meet the investment and development goals that we'll be recommending. Finally, you'll see in our financial analysis an idea around sustainable operational models, right? And so we have to set up these facilities for operational success. That is part of the town's role, right? It cannot be left to operators alone to build out their spaces and to bring them up to run rate, right? There is a development period and often ongoing subsidy needs that will create true stability for this industry. And so within these two recommendations that the town will be asked to consider, we'll have much more detail around specific methods for planning and implementation. And we're delighted that DOLA was able to secure an extension to really provide the town with the time and space that they need to implement this in a meaningful and impactful way. Any questions about these high-level recommendations at this stage of the draft and what we're recommending here and why?
And of course, we're not making decisions tonight, but this is to well acquaint us with it. Any questions? I see no questions.
Great. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Carly. Carly, I'll stay in the driver's seat for the slides here as you move to more formal recommendations. Might I invite, though, any final questions or reflections that Joe and I can answer at this stage?
Well, it's pretty important information, and yeah, I think we have a lot of weighing and understanding to do in the not too far future, since this is coming up in June, right? For the final. And but questions or comments from the board?
And I think what we just wanted to make sure tonight is that we will be pursuing those two best practices for the final draft.
Yep.
And with that first policy will align, especially with this extension, that best practice with some of the code development code rewrite, which will be presented in the fall. So hopefully we'll be able to have some of those policies presented and implemented within that. And yeah, if there's any concerns or questions, comments, otherwise, again, we'll be coming back for an action item of accepting the master plan.
I look at the two recommendations, and I see pros and cons and places where things will get hung up or barricaded or slow. But we'll all be studying it more to kind of get a better feel and have our questions really prepped.
Yeah, and I think as long as we don't have any huge concerns about either of those directions, we'd go through the due process of implementing either of those, whether that be, you know, another formal presentation, resolutions, and, you know, all of that. So it's not a rubber stamp tonight that's gonna get us out the
Right.
door. It's just making sure we're on the rails.
Yeah,
We don't
I-
get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, at a high level, I think those are the two most likely categories to get us into the future. So I'm good with them.
Yeah, I really appreciate the site feasibility analysis, the idea of building these templates that we can then apply based on what comes up on the market. That's so fascinating to me, because, in particular, because paired with the second strategic recommendation of that public-private approach, because I always have an interest in that for, you know, social services like this, but I especially think if we're going to look at the redevelopment piece, which is something we're talking about regularly at the town level for housing and other things, that private component is going to be key to. So to see how that pairs, your recommendation to focus on that and how that pairs with some of these site feasibility approaches, like I'm excited about that, especially because we won't have to reinvent, in theory, we won't have to reinvent the wheel when an opportunity or if an opportunity comes forward, we'll be able to apply that template. So thanks for the work on this so far. I'm guessing in the final packet, we'll be able to, these slides will be included in that. The final packet when it's posted, okay, great. And then, unless I missed them somewhere linked in the.
We'll make sure there's also, we'll make sure all of the current updated versions of everything is in the final packet.
And then I also had a couple of comments, just because I wasn't quick enough on the gun for the last item. I had a couple of comments, so I'm happy to share those now or wait until if somebody else wants to make a comment about the facility plan in particular. Okay, then I'll steal it back.
Yeah, just a question. You know, I know there's been some discussion at Fall River Village of the 4-bedroom and 1-bedroom unit.
Yeah.
How does that fit within these three approaches? Is that kind of similar to the church one, I guess, probably?
So what we're looking at with that is an existing workforce housing unit that would be operated as a family home childcare provider. So that's a private.
Oh, a family home, not a, okay.
Right. We looked at the requirements for parking and all of that and the current need and capacity. We're hoping to launch a pilot program with the housing authority to get
So that's kind
home
of a
provider there.
different sort of thing than any of those three, right?
It's a little different. Yeah, that's why it wasn't necessarily included in this, larger facility discussion.
Thank you.
Yep. And it also falls under, mixed use or multi-use site development. And I will say that family childcare homes as an environment, especially when we think about access and affordability, is a preferred method by many families. So we will be meeting with the Housing Authority as part of our stakeholder engagement in the next couple of weeks and reflecting on that. And here's the good news to the previous board members' comments. Estes Park, we do not anticipate you will have to develop hundreds and hundreds of slots over the next 5 to 10 years. You actually already have a lot of existing infrastructure that can address your current gaps and a feasible pathway forward to contemplate future growth, which has been very steady and consistent over the last 10 to 15 years.
And one last comment, even if, for example, we go with recommendation 2, there will be elements of recommendation 1 that you'll have to happen anyway. No, I think we're good at the point that we're at.
Great.
So,
thank you.
Thanks, Carly, and thanks to the EPIC folk.
Mayor, may I just make one more comment about
Yes, you may.
about the 2025 impact report? Sorry, I was not quick enough on that, but I just wanted to say, Carly, first of all, thanks for the great work on that, and Scott as well. I'm sure Scott was part of that and his team, but I just wanted to say, recently it feels like we've heard some feedback about what's going on with housing and what, people having concerns about the housing, or interest in what's happening at the housing authority level. And I know that's being worked on from a communications perspective, and obviously we'll be talking about it from a town board level in June. But I just wanted to reiterate Gary's comments, Mayor Hall's comments about the benefits of those funds spreading beyond just families and children and employees who are receiving that money. I think I'm really glad you mentioned that, Mayor Hall, because the services that keep us attractive and vibrant and appealing, those all stem from our ability to have those, our workforce and our families, I totally agree that the slide we just saw about people coming in and out of the community and how they work and how everybody decreased in population except for our 55 and up, like all of that's so tied together. So anyway, I wanted to say excellent job on that report. I'm looking forward especially to, our additional reports, but especially to that full year analysis of the middle income tuition assistance. I can't wait to see more about that. That's really compelling to me. And I think this is just a great example of how we're continuing to grow and build based on results, based on community feedback, based on the changing landscape. We've had a couple years under our belt, and we're just continuing to evolve and build on all of that we receive. And I think when Bill and Jamie made their comments, like what I would interpret that as them getting at is that the more info, the better. Keep those details coming for that communications piece that I mentioned at the beginning of my comments. And my hope that we as a board will take that in as great understanding and support. Not that we'll delve into the weeds too much, on those details, but it'll help us continue to understand why the advocacy for these funds and why the work that we're doing is changing the landscape, is making a difference. So great job on that report. I didn't want to just skim past it because I know there's a ton of work that goes not into just creating that report, but into creating the results that report presents. So thank you for that. And thanks for the additional time.
Righto. Thank you, Carly.
Thank you all.
Our last item is a request to enter executive session for discussion of specialized details of security arrangements or investigations, section 246402-4D CRS regarding boardroom security. I will need a motion to go into executive session.
I move to go into executive session for section 24-6-402-4D regarding boardroom security.
I'll second.
Mayor Pro Tem Hazelton moved to go into executive session, and Trustee Lancaster seconded, and we can vote on that. And we will move into executive session. We'll get the room finally prepared. And so thank you, gallery, and we'll excuse you now. So have a good night.